Imagine a crowd of thousands, hungry and hopeless, with nothing but 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Yet in the hands of Jesus, this small offering turned into a miracle. This is the amazing story of the bread miracle in the Bible. Chapter 1. A hungry crowd gathers. It was a bright day near the Sea of Galilee, and people from villages far and wide had gathered to hear Jesus teach. The crowd was massive. Men, women, and children filled the hillsides, their faces eager and hopeful. They had heard of his miracles, the blind receiving sight, the lame walking, and the sick being healed. Hearts longed for his words unlike any other teachers, words that gave life, hope, and peace. Yet as the hours passed, hunger began to gnaw at their stomachs. They had followed him without thinking of food, so captivated by his presence that time slipped away unnoticed. The disciples looked upon the crowd with concern. "Master," one of them said, "it's getting late. Send the people away so they may find food in the nearby towns." But Jesus looked at the thousands before him with compassion. He saw not just hungry stomachs, but hungry souls. And in that moment, he knew he would reveal a miracle that would echo through history. A miracle of bread, but also of faith. The stage was set for something far greater than the disciples could imagine. Chapter 2. A boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. As the disciples murmured about the impossible task of feeding thousands, one of them, Andrew, noticed a boy in the crowd. The boy held a small basket with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, barely enough for his own family. Andrew brought him forward hesitantly and said, "There is a lad here with 5 loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many?" The boy looked up at Jesus, eyes wide but trusting. Though it seemed insignificant compared to the vast need, he willingly offered all that he had. This small act of surrender was about to become the foundation for one of the greatest miracles ever told. Jesus took the loaves into his hands, his eyes lifting toward heaven. The crowd watched in silence, their curiosity turning into expectation. In that simple gesture, the blessing of bread, Jesus was teaching them that even the smallest gift, when placed in God's hands, could become more than enough. The boy could never have imagined that his humble lunch would soon feed thousands. And so, with gratitude in his voice, Jesus prayed, and the miracle began to unfold before the eyes of all who were gathered. Chapter 3. Bread that multiplies. After blessing the loaves and fish, Jesus handed them to the disciples and instructed, "Distribute these among the people." At first, the disciples looked at one another in confusion. How could so little feed so many? But in obedience, they carried the baskets into the crowd. What happened next defied all reason. Every time a disciple reached into the basket, there was more bread and more fish. No matter how many hands stretched out to receive food, the baskets never grew empty. The bread multiplied, the fish increased, and the miracle continued with each passing moment. People gasped as food filled their laps. Families smiled in wonder as they tore pieces of bread that seemed endless. Children laughed with joy, and parents shook their heads in awe. The impossible had become reality. Thousands upon thousands ate, not just a taste, but until they were full. This was no mere trick. It was a sign of God's abundant provision, a glimpse of his power to meet every need. The disciples, still handing out food, began to understand. They were witnessing divine multiplication, proof that when God provides, he provides in overflowing abundance. Chapter 4. 12 baskets left over. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the crowd leaned back, satisfied. Every person, 5,000 men, not counting women and children, had eaten until they were full. What had begun with 5 loaves and 2 fish had become a feast for thousands. Yet the miracle was not over. Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Gather the leftovers so that nothing may be wasted." Dutifully, they moved through the crowd with baskets. What they collected astounded them. 12 baskets full of bread and fish remained. More was left over than what they had started with. The disciples stood in awe, each holding a basket that testified to God's endless generosity. The people, too, were filled not only with food, but also with amazement. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Surely this is the prophet who has come into the world." The miracle was more than nourishment for the body. It was a lesson for the soul. It showed that God is not limited by scarcity. He delights in taking the little we offer and multiplying it beyond imagination. And as the people departed, hearts filled with wonder, they carried with them the memory of a day when heaven touched earth through bread.